Have you ever wondered what it takes to navigate the legal world when technology and regulations are constantly evolving? Today on Let's Discuss, we are joined by Mr. Aman Yadav, a legal rockstar who has not only seen the fast-paced environment of law firms, but also navigated the complex world of merger and acquisitions. This podcast is a two-part series. In the first part, get ready for a conversation packed with insights from real challenges of working as an in-house lawyer and also hilarious but thought-provoking answer to the question, what is the best software a lawyer can have? Spoiler alert, it's interns. So grab your headphones, legal eagles and curious minds alike, because this episode is one you won't want to miss. So Aman, thanks a lot for joining the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Avidash.
It's completely our pleasure. So let me start with the simple question. So you almost have a decade of experience as an external law firm lawyer. Then you shifted to the in-house. What was the reason there?
So in simple terms, it was a number issue.
Okay.
I finished 10 years in law practice in a law firm. And then I got the 10-year itch, which many lawyers get. And that's when I decided to switch.
So what is that 10-year itch? Can you further discuss that?
10 years is a number which, at least in my mind, had been etched for a long time.
Right.
Because I remember we wanted to get a Delhi High Court Bar Association membership. You had to be promoted by any other lawyer of the Delhi High Court Bar Association who has at least 10 years of experience. So I realized that 10 years is a big number in the legal field. That is when even the Bar Association starts taking you seriously. So I always had that 10-year number in mind. And when I reached that number, I decided that either now I'm serious now. So I either continue this law firm trajectory,
right,
or I move in. And to be honest, I'd become a little bored with being a law firm lawyer, because there's not a lot of business that you get to see when you're working in a purely consultant role in a law firm. So you do meet the clients, but it's not a day in, day out. So that's when I decided, let's make life a little more interesting. Let me go in-house. Let me sit with people who are non-lawyers and try to see how things happen. And maybe I'll try to see more interesting aspects of law and business, and which actually turned out to be pretty true.
Wow. So for somebody who is also having that 10-year itch like you, what will be your advice? How to transition from a law firm to in-house role?
See, for me, it was a little difficult because the kind of clients we had at the law firm, I wasn't doing integral work for them in the sense where I could tell them that, I have done series A to D for you. And now you need an in-house lawyer and let me onboard your ship and join you as an in-house legal head or whatever.
Right.
So if you are let's say in a law firm and at a position where you can leverage your own clients, where you can tell them that, I've done the initial rounds of investment for you. I've been doing litigation work for you for the last couple of years, or I've been consulting for you for whatever number of years. So, and you know how good I am or how average I am. Let me join your team if you feel that I'm a good fit. So that's a very easy way of getting in. And I know many people who've done that. The other is that you do it like a regular person. I mean, you just start going on job portals and you start applying.
Right.
Third is, reference is anywhere there. So the easiest way would be just to, jump on board with an existing client who's looking out for a legal counsel.
That kind of makes sense. But did you have to kind of prepare something before that? How do you prepare for that transition?
So see, there's no real preparation as such. You just have to be ready for a lot of change in how you operate. So there's no preparation. I always knew that consulting is very finely tuned. A law firm lawyer's job is pretty different. You get a lot of time and your billing is also at a significantly higher price as compared to an in-house lawyer, and you get to spend a lot of time on issues. And I knew that would not be the case in-house. In-house is a lot of moving parts, a lot of quick shifting things. So you have to be ready for that change in mindset. Purely consulting to in-house. In-house is more of an employee role, which is significantly different.
Okay, makes sense. So I'll ask a controversial question. So some people believe that people who earlier used to work in a law firm and then transition to an in-house role are better. And some people believe that the people who have been in in-house counsel from the day one of their career, they would ultimately become a better in-house counsel. What are your 2 cents on this?
So from what I've seen and the kind of companies that I've interviewed with, most of them, if they are looking to set up their own in-house team, then they are very much looking forward to people who've been in a law firm, because they know that this person has undergone rigorous training and it will be easier for them to set up an entire vertical and do it properly. Let's say if there is a legal aid who has come from a law firm, then he or she would be very comfortable working with another law firm lawyer.
Right.
Because the way that law firm lawyers operate, whether in a law firm or in-house, is totally different. Again, I'm a little biased also. What I've seen is that when I've hired people for my own team, whenever I've hired people who have come from law firms, even tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 also, they ended up behaving and operating as better lawyers instead of when I hired somebody who has only seen in-house life. Because the kind of intensity that you have to deal with in law firms is not present in in-house teams. Unless the in-house team is, again, coming back to square one, is led by a lawyer who was also in-house.
Okay. That's interesting, but you have given a very diplomatic answer there.
I know.
So essentially you are saying that the people who come with a law firm background tends to be a better in-house counsel. Yes. Okay. Just clarifying. So yeah, that's a very interesting take that you gave. And I was looking at your profile and I saw that, for a job post, I think you shared on LinkedIn. And over there, you also mentioned that you prefer people with law firm background, right? When a fresher comes in or somebody, whom you're hiring, how do you evaluate? Like, how do you judge he's a good fit?
So for me, it's very simple. I also end up annoying a lot of candidates, but which is fine. Because if they're not willing to undergo that one test which I have, then there is no point. So after speaking to them, after having a cup of coffee with them when they're relaxed, I give them a written test.
Okay.
The written test is very basic.
Okay.
All I want to see is whether their grammar is good, whether they can write well. Right. I want to see that no technology is helping them correct their grammatical mistakes or prompting them for finishing their sentences. So I give them a piece of paper. I make them write basic clauses. It also shows me how much they have retained when they were going through agreements. So I'll usually make them write an indemnity clause and or an arbitration clause. And sometimes I'll make them write a simple letter. Because that letter eventually ends up telling me that when they start writing emails to, let's say, the CEO, if they write an email, or to the chief operating officer, I know that the email will go in a way which the other side will be able to read. So it's basically stakeholder management. If I know that they can't write a letter straight on a piece of paper, then it's unlikely that the email, when it gets circulated in the company, it's going to be read well.
Okay. Essentially, you are saying that their communication skills, especially in writing, has to be excellent. That's like the number one priority for you.
Yeah, for me as a lawyer, I want to hire somebody who can write. Because sometimes I feel more than anything else, we are glorified and highly paid clerks in a sense. Because the whole job that we have is to write and explain things in a way, especially in-house, which is simple enough for people to understand and you don't have to take them through the mumbo jumbo. So if you can do that, that's the best.
How about understanding what the business people or the other stakeholders, expect from you? How do you manage that?
With me or we're talking about the candidate?
Both. Because that's also an important part of understanding, right? Once you understand what they actually expect from you, then you can, refine your communication to serve that purpose.
So when candidate comes to me, I always ask them about their previous company. What business they were in and what kind of business problems they were solving as an in-house lawyer. Right. And that gives me a very quick understanding of how much they understood the business and how deep they tried to get into it. Okay. Because if they tell me that it was just, contracts would come, I would do it, I would send it back. So usually as your hair grays, you can ask good questions even about the business which they had worked in, which you don't know much about, but you can ask a few good questions and you'll eventually understand very easily if they went deep into it or if they were working superficially. When it comes to my own self, whenever I join a new job, even before joining, I pick up the laws around it. I buy bare rights, for example, when I joined OLX and they wanted me to set up their autos legal department, basically. Right. So 2 months before joining, I went to the district court. I bought the motor vehicle acts and rules and I started reading it, underlining it. So by the time I reached on day one itself, I had a fair understanding of the regulations surrounding buying and selling used cars.
And that's essentially, in your opinion, is the number one priority, right? Understanding the laws that surround a business, right?
So the questions that are coming to you are going to be a mix of legal and business.
Right.
And the business questions will be easy, provided you know the law around it. There is hardly any business which would not have some regulations around it. So it's always advisable, even before joining a new company, to go through whatever the laws are, so that on day one, you have some ammo in your arsenal.
Absolutely. Great advice there. So, for our listeners who don't know anything about OLX Auto, how would you explain them? What does OLX Auto does?
OLX Autos is a competitor of Spinny and Cars24.
Okay.
We buy and sell used cars on a wholesale basis. We have tried to solve a problem which car sellers used to face when they would go into the unorganized market. You go to a car dealer and you never really know what you're getting into, when you're going to get the money, whether the car will be transferred or not, whether the insurance will be transferred or not. So that is a business problem which OLX Autos was solving. Not anymore. That vertical has been shut down. At least when it was there, that was the problem statement that we were solving.
Wow. Great explanation there. That brings me to the next question. Like copying your questions actually, what are the biggest legal problems you're solving at OLX Auto? And would you care to give us a little bit of insights of OLX Auto's acquisition by Car Trade Tech?
I should clarify, OLX Autos business has been shut down.
Okay.
OLX Autos is no longer buying and selling cars.
Right.
So this was done last year.
Right.
Now coming to the acquisition part, till I would say August of 2023, OLX Autos was owned by the tech giant, Netherlands-based called Proces.
Okay.
Proces has sold their entire shareholding in the autos and online classifieds business of OLX to an Indian listed company called Car Trade Tech.
Yeah.
So that happened last year around August, September.
Right. So now what problems or what things OLX Auto is kind of focusing on? Are you in at the liberty to actually share that?
Yeah. So OLX Autos, now with that gone, Car Trade Tech had basically bought OLX Autos and the online classifieds business. So as of now, they are focusing on the online classifieds business, which you must have seen the ads. OLX pe bechte. So
Exactly.
it's basically selling anything that you want to sell: shoes, furniture, motorcycle, car, anything, used, new also. I see a lot of new advertisements also over there. You can sell anything over there. So the idea is to make it a purely tech company. So like an e-commerce marketplace, but not really.
Right. So that's essentially what I was trying to understand. So now when I'm going to the OLX website, I bought Nintendo Switch a couple of weeks back from OLX. Right. So when I'm going to that, I'm going to your company essentially, right? So my understanding was that OLX auto related classifieds ads are different and the normal OLX ads that we see are different. That's not the case.
No, they're the same.
They are the same. So now everything that we are seeing on OLX is something you guys are managing.
Correct. Something that Car Trade Tech, the new owner, is managing.
Right. Under the OLX brand. Wow. That's really amazing. So, this is a very interesting space, right? So something like, amazing, some weird story that you want to share with our listeners?
So see, there are a lot of weird stories because when you sell...
Yeah, when you said, that's why I told you, like, if any company can have a monopoly on weird stories, it would be OLX, because the huge number of transactions and the huge variety of transactions you guys are having, is really mind-blowing. But anything that you are at the liberty to share, I understand you have a lot of weird stories, which we can talk about, once the recording is off, but...
I think it's better that we talk about the weird stories after the recording.
Okay, I'll let you leave.
They're a mix of legal and compliance. I should not be sharing them here.
I know. One of the things is that, once a case has been settled, then if I'm like interviewing lawyers from the US, one of the good things that happens is the case has been decided by the court of law. Now they can actually talk about it. It's not, in the litigation, but in India, it takes so much time for the...
Yeah.
Right.
So one weird thing, because it was in the news, I can talk about it.
Right.
Last year, there was a case called State of Haryana versus Pinto.
Okay.
And somebody had used Pinto's mobile phone to commit some online frauds.
Okay.
Now an FIR was registered against Pinto. I don't know who Pinto is. Okay. Pinto went to the police station. The cops, as usual, arrest him. And then Pinto hired a lawyer. And the lawyer filed a quashing of the FIR in the Punjab and Haryana High Court.
Okay.
And now Justice Sangwan passed an order over there which totally shook the way OLX does its business online. They basically ended up taking away our safe harbor protection. Yeah. Right. And the intermediary positives that we have under the Information Technology Act, those were taken away. They were talking about, doing KYC, creating escrow accounts, getting confirmation from the buyer and seller. It was a totally unworkable model. And the beauty of that order was that in a quashing petition, instead of quashing the FIR, the order had been passed against a business practice.
Okay.
So we had to then take a senior advocate. We went to the Supreme Court and we had to explain that this was a quashing petition. This was not even necessary, whatever had been done in Justice Sangwan's order. So that took a couple of months and we finally got a positive order. But that was one time where such a small issue,
Right.
Two's issue, became a very big issue for us.
Right. Yeah, that's actually a great story. I saw that you recently wrote an article on maintaining diversity and inclusivity in organizations. So would you care to give your thoughts on that?
It's very simple. We are moving towards a more egalitarian world, and whatever beliefs and practices we had in the past, especially as a cheap labor supplier, India as a supplier of cheap labor, that is changing. So you see all these new laws coming in. You have women-centric laws. You have laws for equal wages. You have laws for higher wages. Gig workers are being now recognized. So those sort of things are happening, but not with the kind of speed that they should be happening at. So overall, I believe that especially when the 4 new labor codes come in, whenever they kick in state-wise or centrally, that's going to be a game changer. So overall, we are moving in the right direction, but I think we're taking a lot of time.
Yeah, this brings the next question. Right, there's so many laws that are applicable on a company, right? Some laws are, say, for instance, trigger-based, right? So as a legal counsel, how do you keep a bird eye on the whole organization and making sure that it is complying with everything it needs to?
See, my way of doing it is very simple.
Okay.
I didn't spend a lot of time. I know this is blasphemy on this podcast, but I didn't take a software for it. I was maintaining an Excel sheet with the laws, with the laws that are applicable.
You're not in minority, I would say. I'll give you that benefit.
And I was using the best software that I would use, which is
Right.
basically an intern.
Okay.
I had interns working on it. I had junior level lawyers working on it, and we were doing it organically. We knew that these 10 are the bigger laws which are applicable and which are also external facing, in the sense that if there is a non-compliance, then it could blow up into something which is coming in news media and all of that. So we
Right.
would maintain a hawk's view on these laws and a bird's eye view on the generic laws which are applicable as and when they would come. Because I believe India has active maybe 2,500 bare acts.
Right.
It is almost impossible to be ready with each and everything. So sometimes, you just have to roll the dice and
Right.
do the best. So you pick up the 10, 20 things which are very essential, and the rest, you roll with the bunches.
Right. No, absolutely makes sense. It's almost impossible for you to kind of figure it out, right? One of the strange things that happened with us recently, and this kind of blew up our mind, what was happening is that some of our team was using some open source software, right? And with that came a little bit of compliance, and that something we were or we shouldn't be doing, right? And luckily it came to our attention before, it was exposed to anybody else. But see, that's the kind of problem. We have a really small organization, right? I almost have an idea what everybody is doing right now, even though I'm speaking with you right now, right? But I'm sure that's not the case with you, because you won't even know the name of every person who is working on a company, right? And how do you make sure that they're not doing certain thing which, brings up a compliance issue for you down the line? A very challenging problem.
Again, you pick up the bigger things and you create SOPs around them and you
Right.
roll them out. The whole beauty of having these SOPs or business guidelines is that for the core business activities, whether it be customer support, what you will say, not say. So I've worked on FAQs also for the call center.
Right.
So you pick up these bigger things, you make SOPs, you make FAQs, and you do it maybe every 6 months and you give it to the business teams. And then you let them handle it. Now, every now and then there will be one small grenade which you have to diffuse, but more or less things work well with this approach.
But do you think anybody reads those SOPs that you so painstakingly draft?
So if you keep them very short, crisp,
Right.
maybe like 2-3 pages, and you have bullet points, they will read it. If not all of it, they will remember 70%. And then secondly, because there is a reporting structure, and
Right.
if something blows up, you can always hold people accountable. Why did you follow the SOP? So that way, it more or less ends up working. Obviously, there are going to be edge cases where it didn't go as per the SOP or the FAQs, but more or less it ends up working.
Right. No, absolutely. This is the biggest challenge, most of the in-house legal counsels are facing right now because, what happens is that as a legal person, you can draft the SOPs, but you can't make sure that everybody is reading it. And legal is just as a subject, everybody tries to stay away from, right? They say like, it's your headache. That's why we have hired you, right? So a lot of our clients, what they're doing is they are creating the chat bots on their own SOPs. So that becomes really easy for these guys. Obviously, nobody is going to read everything that you have written, right? You very appropriately said that, it has to be like, really crisp. But once you have a conversation on that, right, your chatbot can refer and then explain it in a stuff which a normal layperson can, really understand. That is something we are seeing a lot of adoption here because whenever they are in trouble, they can just ask that question. That brings me to the next interesting question that I want to ask you. If you had a genie and it could take away the 3 boring tasks that you're performing right now, what would be those 3 boring, mundane tasks?
Number 1 would be reading my emails and answering them for me.
Absolutely.
Because I sometimes end up getting 300 emails a day. I don't even know what to do with them. Number 2 would be when I get an agreement which has more than 20 pages, summarizing it and telling me the risks. Number 3 would be if I'm getting a litigation brief. Again, sometimes they are drafted well, sometimes not well. Right. So reading it and telling me where the petition actually, or whatever the court brief that has been prepared, whatever has to be filed, the filing is in line with whatever the relief that we are seeking. Is it going to help us, or is the drafting so shoddy that we should completely overlook? The way court documents are drafted, sometimes they're not really good. And going through them and then looking at the annexes, you realize that this is totally botched up. And that's where I believe the in-house teams end up spending a lot of time. We're basically playing tennis.
Right.
The external lawyer in an investment agreement is, if there's an investment agreement, he's sending the draft to you, 100-pager. You're looking at it, but you're not going through it fully. You can see things and you have to send something back. Sometimes you end up missing things. So over there, the software would be very important, summarizing things and telling you the salient parts. Similarly with litigation briefs, whatever you want to file, if the software can catch it, that would be the best. So that what I would want the genie to do.
No, that's a great request. Even I would ask. So when you talk about 300 emails, right, per day, are they actually that many? 300 emails is a typical number for you.
I mean, maybe it's 270, right. But on some days it's easily, when you do a lot of small ticket transactions,
right,
the grievances are a lot.
Right.
And when I used to work for the classifieds team and the autos team, there's too many issues which come up.
Wow. And these are all legal issues. These are not like...
I mean, you could say that because ultimately, if your vendor is not doing something, it's very easy to delegate it to the legal team and tell them to basically show your teeth. It's very easy for the business teams to delegate it to the legal team, which is fine, which is how sometimes things work.
Wow. Great stories there. So this was the first part of podcast with Aman. Stay tuned for the second part, in which we will go into the heart of this topic and learn from Aman's his initial impressions of generative AI and what are the use cases where he thinks generative AI can be implemented. We will also discuss how he evaluates a person coming in for an interview. And lastly, we'll have an amazing and interesting rapid fire round. So subscribe and press the bell icon for the next part.